Youth sports in America. Parents are the ultimate fanatics. Coaches and officials are quitting. And I'm going to give you my viewpoint as a parent, coach, and official. This is Kent, and this is Fanatically Speaking. Let's go. All right, as the show is Fanatically Speaking, I am a fanatic. But as I mentioned, parents are the ultimate fanatics when it comes to sports fans and in youth sports. Why do I say that? Because they are the fans of their kids, the ones playing. And again, as a parent, definitely you should be your child's biggest fan, and there is obviously limitations to that. But I get it, right? You're more invested as the parent, as that fan of youth sports when you're, whatever age. And I'm talking youth sports in, from the time it starts at 3 to, high school as a senior. And I've been around this for a long time, and I'm going to get into all my viewpoints from different positions or different, at the time, what I was, right? But again, rec ball, travel ball, it doesn't matter. Your parents are, again, the ultimate fanatic. They are cheering on their kid. They are going crazy about the way they're playing or how they're playing. What the official referee umpire is calling, for against their team, their child. And it's the same in rec and travel. It doesn't matter. I've seen it all. So the idea of this episode is, again, to look into all that and dissect it, because once again, I have been in all areas of this, whether it be, working or being a parent, being a, coach, and now an official. So I've done it at different times in my life. But again, to get back to the parents again, they're the ones, different than, professional or things like that, sports where they're cheering for their team that they either grew up with or they went to college somewhere, or however the case, however you became a fan of your team, right? People get crazy, right? I mean, I yell at the TV. We talk about that. Me as an Eagles fan, I yell at the TV. And, my wife is like, "Why? Well, who are you yelling at?" Well, I'm yelling at the TV. They can't hear me, but this is what fans do. You get upset, but it is a different level when your child is playing. You as a parent have, put in the time to, you pay for your child to play. You put in the time at home to practice and work with them. You put in the time of taking them to practice and the games. And then if you are competitive, and have a sports background, then you still have that in you when your child plays. And everyone has different backgrounds in sports. Some were the stars, some were not the stars. You played, but you weren't like the greatest. Or, whatever your background is, right? If you were the star, you want your child to be the star like you were. If you weren't, you want your child to be better than you. And like I said, I've seen it. And it doesn't matter what level. Now, as you get older, as myself, and you've been through it and you've seen it, you start changing your viewpoint. You start changing your mindset. And you can look back and say, yeah, now I'm learning. And you definitely learn from being a parent, coach, official, because, again, you get to different angles, different viewpoints. And you see what you sounded like as a parent and what you sounded like as a coach and what the officials were feeling when you were yelling at them. So, but yeah, and rec and travel, even though they differ in different sports, parents, they do for sure act like, that their child or kid is, going into the league, soon. And that's not the case. Definitely not in rec ball. And, for some kids, I get it. Rec ball it might be the only kind of competitive sports that they play, right? Not everybody is going to make the school team. Not everyone is going to play at another level. And again, depending on what age, right? When kids are young, you're putting them in sports, one, to, try to see, can they play? And, you try to see which one they're good at, and then maybe you pick one or a few or whatever, or maybe it's again an activity to keep them active, which is always good. Again, I say this about sports: it's a really really good thing to bring kids together from all different backgrounds. Again, if you've played sports, normally on a team you are all in it together. You're friends no matter what. There may be, there's times obviously some people you don't like, and it is what it is. But most of the time growing up, like I said, if you're in sports, it does bring you together, and it is a good way to keep, kids out of trouble. That's the old saying as well. But again, parents, they do take it too far sometimes. They do take it too serious sometimes. And that goes for, again, the game that's being played. Whether it's their kid or the team, or they may fight with another parent. You know what I mean? I think this literally happened, the other night in a high school level, where you're hearing like parents are fighting in the parking lot. I'm like, what are they fighting about? Right? Is it that serious? And it can be, and especially at school ball level. I mean, in any level really. I mean, I have seen it all, and been a part of it all. Rec league as well. I mean, I've seen parents fight in the crowd and at rec league. Of course, this is not parents, but again, this is not even youth sports. But I've seen grown men, try to fight a referee or each other in men's leagues, and again. That's that men acting like kids, right? You're playing, not getting paid, and somehow you're gonna fight. So parents do the same thing in rec ball, travel ball, and youth sports. So again, what level do they need to be at, right? And they're complaining. You see different types of levels. I see parents, and they complain about the rules, and normally they don't know the rules. And that is something where either the league or the coaches, didn't share the rules with the parents, or they didn't read the rules, whatever the case may be. And I get it. Not everybody knows sports, and a lot of parents don't know sports, even though their kids might be good at sports. But that's when that's the time that's when you don't argue, and you don't be loud in those moments, because when you're loud, you need to be knowing what you're talking about. So again, the fanatic and the parent at these youth sports is kind of getting out of control, and it has been for years. And just to give a little quick, I want to give my viewpoints here soon from different viewpoints. But I've been around youth sports for really 20 years, but maybe even roughly 20 years, right? If you add them all up, I guess 20 years, right? Whether it was working at Parks and Rec, it was officiating, at some point in time in my life, and currently, obviously being a parent, running the actual youth sports athletics for a Parks and Recreation organization for a city. So I've been at all levels, part-time. I've done it all at the Parks and Rec level. Again, been the athletic coordinator, coached, been the parent. Now I'm officiating. So again, I've seen it for 20 years. Parents acting crazy. Again, and I've done did travel ball for almost 10 years, right? So, I've seen it at all levels. I've been a part of it. Parents just go a little crazy, right? It's the yelling. cursing, at the officials. I've seen them get mad at coaches. I've seen parents get mad at a coach on the other team the way they treated a child, right? And then and that actually led to a fight. So that was, they were taking up for a kid that wasn't even theirs, and which led to, coach and parents fighting. So yeah, parents go a little crazy. So we got to think about that here with youth sports. And as I get to some of my points in youth sports in America right now, it starts with the parents. In my experience as well, basketball is one of the worst times. My favorite sport to be a part of, like playing, coaching, watching at that level of youth to high school. And, it's definitely in rec, in AAU, I don't see too much but there is craziness happens, especially when it gets into the deeper competition, things like that. Rec ball, it's such a closed-in area normally for the gym, and I think that matters. And again, parents just really get into it, and I get it. Basketball's just, it's so much action. They don't understand though that there will be contact in basketball. There is a little bit of physicality. They will touch at times, so everything is not a foul. You can't call, officials can't call everything because you would never get through a game. So you have to pick and choose. And especially in rec ball, speaking of basketball, the every kid has a different level, of talent and ability, and that's okay. So sometimes officials have to referee, with a curve. You know what I mean? It. And parents don't understand that, right? They either want everything called or, I don't know. Sometimes I don't know what they want. But when you see things like, like you said, cursing or fighting, which fighting obviously is pretty bad. But then you see parents, pulling their kid off the court during a game. And I say that because that happened recently while I was officiating. So when you see that, and then you wonder, and not just that instance, but then you wonder why the players, the kids, act the way they act on the field or on the court. Like I said, it starts with the parents. Because in my time, again, my 20 years, I've seen a kid push a coach up against the wall during a timeout, right? And wondered, like, is that parent going to, did that parent see, like, what are they going to do something? Because the coach can't, he can't do anything to the kid. You know what I mean? I've seen that. And, more recently you see more and more kids, yapping their mouth and even, disrespecting the referee, official, umpire, coach, other players. And some of that, it definitely comes from professional athletes sometimes with the taunting and things like that. But again, I think, when you don't, I'm not sitting here knocking parents here. I'm just talking about youth sports in general. And a couple examples that we experienced this year was just, seeing a kid over and over act the same way and getting technicals, and, the parent or the coach didn't really take, action to correct it. So it kept happening. And then of course it ends up blowing up. Right. So things like that happen. So I just say, with parents in youth sports, just remember that, at the end of the day, no one's getting paid except the officials. But, even in that, it's like, there's a reason for that. Right. I mean, they deal with a lot, but the parents just have to kind of calm down a little bit with that part of it, with the cheering part, being on the side cheering and, like you said, yelling at the official and getting all crazy with youth sports, because again, like I said, it's not, the rec league is developmental, really. It really is. We're all competitive, and there are definitely good talent out there, but it's a way, again, it's developmental, it's extra, it's for fun. It really is. And it took me a while to kind of get on board with that because of my competitive spirit. Because again, I was trying to win, and I was trying to do. You get into it because when you play sports, you should be playing to win. That is for sure. There should be no participation trophies and things like that. But I think there's a level of the, again, fanatic that you got to be as a parent, right? And there's always stuff going to happen. People are always going to say things, and kids will do things, and you figure those moments out. But I think we have to limit the hostility that we're yelling, right? And yell at a different, in a different way. And why do I bring that up about the parents? Because it's going to lead me to, it's going to lead me to coaches, right? And, with coaches, the word was coaches are quitting in youth sports because of parents. This was the like I said, this was the report that came out recently. ESPN even did a story on it, and it was just, and I was like, yeah, I get that, right? Parents, they complain, they want, they want they want their kid to play. They want their kid to play the whole game. They want their kid to, everything is about, you're not coaching right. You're not doing this right. And again, this is, I guess, leading back to parents for the moment. What I've also learned is parents complain in rec ball. They complain in high school. It doesn't matter. I'm definitely not naming names. I don't even remember half the names, right? But, especially when you coach your own kid, or if you coach, like I coached my niece, before, and, the other parents, so, the one big thing always brought up is, daddy ball, if you're, the dad. And, I remember getting, I've had emails coaching in rec ball about that I was, special treatment for my niece. And I was coaching girls basketball. And it was funny at the time. I was like, well, when you get, girls in sports, the talent is not always spread out, right? You get like maybe a few, you're lucky to get more than a few normally on a team, right? It just is what it is, especially in in basketball and softball, things like that. So yeah, I remember I got the letter. Again, it was about my niece, and it was like, why is she running the plays? Why is she doing this? Why? And I was like, well, she's the only one that can dribble the ball up the court. So I don't know what you would like for me to do. Like we want to be able to get the, you want to be able to get the ball down court, past half court, and at least have a chance to run play, score and have a chance to score, and sometimes in rec ball, that's the way it is. I even got questioned before about, I think this was like 5-6-year-old basketball. And at the time in that, the rules were they could play defense at half court. Things have changed recently, but again, I had to tell, they're like, why do you let the same kid bring the ball up? And I'm like, well, if not, then we're never going to get the ball down the court, and no one will ever touch the basketball or have a chance. So it's sometimes it's pretty simple and it's funny. And again, coaches, they're quitting due to the parents because, again, they're getting, the coaches get it first, right? They get the why, and complaints and the emails and the text and whatever. And a lot of times we have to remember, especially in like youth sports, right? These coaches are volunteers. It's really hard. Again, I told you I was, to get coaches. I told you I was over it. It's really hard to get coaches. You try to get them in. They're doing it on their off time. Most of the time they have kids, but again, it does take a lot of your time, like to coach. I mean, I've been coaching for not only involved in obviously youth sports, but coaching even for the last 20 years. And I'm ready for a break, right? I love sports and all that, but at the time it's like, man, like you need a break. You need that. Like I've been doing this and running around, and now, it takes a lot. So when these youth coaches, it's hard to get them. They don't want to deal with it. And people then will complain. And they're like, well, this coach does this and our coach does this. And, the comeback is normally, well, you can sign up and coach if you like. And that's always an option. So, but then they say, well, I don't have time. Okay, well, I don't know what to tell you, right? It's rec ball, and, they're doing their best, and it depends on what age they are. And again, you're not going to expect miracles from your, youth coaches in the few hours they get, and literally hours they might get a season to coach and practice and then do that in the game. So, coaches quitting is definitely due to the parents. And, the same for officials. It's hard to get officials. There'd been a drop in umpires and referees, and that was due to, again, parents and coaches included yelling at them about every single call and just talking to them like any old way. And again, I can also say that I've been in there. I've yelled at referees and I've yelled at umpires, so I know what that feels like. And I always told people I didn't like umpiring and officiating. I'd rather be the one yelling than getting yelled at. And here I am now, find myself again officiating, refereeing, and umpiring. But there's no, so we have to talk about this. Like, there's a reason they're quitting, because again, a lot of these cases, especially with like umpires and officials and, referees, it's not just that they're yelling at you. We've seen these where it gets physical, and it can get dangerous. And once again, it is like, over what? Over a game? Over, especially like youth sports. Like, it's youth sports. It's rec league. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's a game. And you have to be able to just move on. Like, is it that serious that you would, it would come to physicality, over this? Is again, it kind of blows your mind that people can be that way. And that it is adults at the end of the day, whether it's parents or coaches or whoever. I've seen bad referees and officials too that just don't care about their job. They're there for a paycheck. They don't care if they miss call. They don't care about any of that. I am not that way. I care. Like I'm going to be honest and say I probably do miss call. I know I miss calls, but I'm trying to get it right. I don't want to. I feel horrible if I miss a call. So, adults, at the end of the day, yes, adults are ruining, youth sports. That is a fact. They are the ones that will ruin it. They're trying to live, through their kid, or they are just, super competitive, or they're just crazy. Let's be honest. You have to be a certain level of something to get that mad or that upset, when it comes to this stuff. And, but again, like I said, I've seen it all. Parents complain, about, playing time. I've seen it in rec ball. I gave you a few examples of, the few times I got, questioned again about stuff as a coach in rec league. And then you get to the high school level and you think, oh, well, it gets better here, right? Nope. Nah. Parents complain. They create, fake Twitter accounts to bash the coaching staff and, things like that, even though, it's just funny, right? The things that you deal with and the lengths that parents go to, try to get, people fired or lose their job over coaching and think that there's just something going on, that they're out to get, their kid. And I get it to a degree, right? You get, sometimes you do get a little crazy over your kid. And I said that, right? Parents are the ultimate fanatic. I'm my son's biggest fan. I'm my daughter's biggest fan. She's not sports, but, she does, like I said, she's not into sports, but, that's okay. Whatever your kid does, you should be their biggest fan. You should be the fanatic, right? The ultimate fanatic. But yeah, it is crazy to see that it does not get better. And I say that because, rec league, there's like rules. Everybody plays a certain amount of time. It's kind of even as you possibly can get it. So, you just have to play everybody a certain amount of time. Now, obviously, normally as a coach, you're going to play. It's not exactly the same, but it's made to where the lesser players do get to play the majority of the game. You're still going to play the more advanced players more. That's just sports, and competition. So like you said, that's just the way it is. But you think that you get into even middle school to high school. Middle school is like a weird area that, you think about. I don't know. You got good coaches, and then also sometimes they just say, "Hey, you're a teacher. You want to coach? Here you go." I've seen it all in middle school too. Travel ball is a little different, right? You pay to play, and that's a tough one. And I've been there, right? You almost feel like you got to play people because they paid, and you go out of town, they paid to travel to another state. Ultimately, you're trying to win the game, right? And when you get to that certain, if your team's good and you make the championship, you really do need to just play the best players or whoever's performed during the tournament or that day or whatever the case may be. Again, different levels. There's different interpretations of, ball. And definitely rec league is one where it's like, know your kid, parents, know your kid, know their talent, and be honest with yourself. That's what you have to be. You have to be honest with yourself. Travel balls are just way different. I recommend, again, just have enough kids. Maybe have one sub or something like that. Or, it's never good. I see it in AAU basketball. You got 12 kids on a team. It's like, how are you going to rotate these kids and have them play? It's impossible. And I get it. Sometimes they don't show up, things like that. But again, have a good number on your team where, everybody gets to eat. Travel ball the same way. And then again, like I said, I brought up high school. Middle school is one thing. That's like a mix. That's really a mixed bag right there. But the best players should still be playing in middle school, right? I mean, it's school ball. That's the level where, it's like, hey, if you're good enough, you'll get to play. If not, now, there's always politics that go on, and I'm not saying that doesn't go on in high school too. I'm just saying that when we're talking about these levels and you got these parents complaining about stuff, especially like playing time and things like that, you have to get into, what level are we at? In high school level, normally, again, the best player is going to play. I know a lot of these, especially for some sports, the stats are there. You can look at them. They can be shared, and it doesn't take a rocket science to look at it, right? It's just look at the facts, look at the stats, and you perform, you get to play, or certain things. Now, there's always a gray area, right? I think attitude plays a part of this. I think practice plays a part of this. I think there's those extra things that you do, hustle, how you treat your teammates, how you treat your coaches, how you do the extra stuff to get the sport ready, right? Just for an example, in baseball, I mean, everyone has a job. You got to get the field ready. You got to help pick up. You got to do all these things. And if you don't do that, and if you're slacking on that, and you're making other people do that, or you're not taking, hitting the cage serious, or you're not taking practice serious, or you're not taking schoolwork serious, or you're not taking whatever the case may be, sometimes it's more than what you do on the field, right? So I think all that comes into play in high school. So definitely was in for a shock when I say that, that parents, do it in high school. And again, I will share my guilty, part of that. I cannot, I'm going to be honest. Like, I'm not going to sit here and do this show and call out people and call out parents and not give you my transgressions, right? And admit that I was wrong. And hopefully that anyone listens to this and they've done it, they can admit that they're wrong. You know, again, be honest. You got to be honest, you know? But yeah, so again, this really just all ties into, I just wanted it to tie into, like I said, coaches and officials quitting mainly due to parents. But like I said, it was more, officials, you're getting it from parents and coaches. Coaches are quitting due to the parents. And, just again, watching, just people go crazy over youth sports. And, it's just hey, let's just dial it down a little. And then we can see, then dial it down and let's see if youth sports can get better. Okay, so like I mentioned, I'm going to get into the few moments that I, can say I was honest, right? This is going to be really short and sweet too. I got two moments, and they have happened in the last few years where, as a coach and as a parent, I had my moment, right? And I've had a few moments as a coach, right? And like I told y'all, I can look back and see how I acted, as a parent. Not really as a parent. When my son started, I was coaching, right? Even before he started playing sport, even before he was born, I was coaching. You get a little more intense when your kid's playing, right? Because you're looking at, you're more invested, right? You get a little amped up, especially if your kid plays bad. Then you get a little amped up. Then you're mad. And then you're mad at everybody, right? I used to, one of the things that I was always pretty good. I knew my limits, especially coaching in like the local rec league in Mount Holly. Obviously, I was working there, so it was like I got to be a certain, you can't go too crazy. So I knew my levels, but I can look back and say, I was probably taking rec league a little too serious. I'm honest. And then also, when the referees, then you kind of know, like, okay, I know what I can do and what I can't do. Right. I know that I can go so far and he won't do anything. And that's okay too. He knew, when they know you're not serious, like he's not really mad. He's just kind of excited because of the game. That's kind of the way it was. But all that to say, in travel ball, again, a little more serious, a little more pressure. You're playing better competition, bigger tournaments. A lot of eyeballs are on you to produce, no matter what you say, right? And you're competing, and you're trying to compete not just with other teams, but within your team, or however the case may be. So, before I got the worst was like I got put in, I got put in the dugout for a game. That's like not an ejection. It's just kind of like a warning. So you got to stay in the dugout. I would honestly, sometimes parents would be yapping at me from the other team, and I may respond and react, and looking at that, some of it is just my temper sometimes. It's like you don't think, and you just respond to someone, talking to you. So the biggest moment was a few years ago, and just to give a little backstory, it was middle of the summer, hot. I was, working, a second job, so getting no sleep, when I say second, I mean like third shift, and you're getting no sleep for like days after days, right? So on this particular day, I was really tired, and very hot. And it's a bad combination, right? You're tired, so you're ill. You're already in a bad mood, and then it's hot. So I kind of zoned out in this moment, and we were playing a team, and there was a thing, I was in the dugout basically, not doing a lot, just trying to stay awake and do whatever I could do. My dad, in his 70s and barely walking, needing surgeries, having surgeries, all these things, again, holding on to that coaching life, was coaching first. So a couple of plays at first base happened where the throw pulled the other team's first baseman in the baseline. So our runners going to first base, they collided, not intentionally. So it turns out the other coach on the team, his son was the first baseman. So, of course, he started, running his mouth, yapping and all that fun stuff. And I'm just watching him. And then I see that, Dad over there coaching first is talking to the dugout and this coach. I guess they're having a back and forth about what happened. I think ultimately it was Dad was telling us, hey, it's not on purpose. It's the throws. No one's doing anything on purpose. And so Dad, I think, maybe said some stuff that he would have said when he was younger to tell the guy, how he was acting. But that led to, the guy, obviously arguing with my dad a little bit. And Dad's not getting too animated, but I'm watching that guy. I'm just kind of steady watching it. Ultimately, the guy, the coach, he starts pointing his finger at Dad, and that's where I lost it. And so there is video of this, and we shall see if this gets shared for this episode. But anyways, yeah, so I do lose it. I think it's just a perfect storm of, someone, obviously you're going to stand up for your dad, getting someone younger than him, way young, half his age, pointing at him. So I take that as a threat. I'm hot. I'm tired. So yeah, I immediately, I just walk out of the dugout yelling at the guy, crossing the field, on the field during mid-game. The umpires don't know what's going on. They're trying to stop me. I knock the clicker out of their hand. I get thrown out. I don't even care. And I look back at it, and some would say, well, I could have really ran at them and probably, fought them. And I think somewhere in my mind was probably like, well, there's no reason for that. It is travel ball, but it is ultimately, I don't know if it's worth that at the moment. He hid behind, the umpires, but in my mind, when you kind of black out, you go crazy. You don't even know what you're doing. For the most part, that's the way it was. I was just, losing it. So not my finest, greatest moment. I yelled all the way out of the ballpark as they kicked me out, all the way to my car. It was kind of crazy. When you see like crazy, like, you're just like, yeah, this guy went crazy. This quiet guy who normally is quiet, like I said, he went a little crazy. But this instant, again, I was, it wasn't about the umpires. It wasn't about the game, anything like that. It was literally about the guy. It was really outside of the game. It was him. Even though what was going on was a part of the game, it was him pointing at my dad. So I was really defending him. So I like to put that in context of, I didn't get thrown out because of the game. I got thrown out because you see somebody pretty much threatening your father. You're going to stand up and say, hey, like I told him, I was like, hey, you want to point, you want to do something, you do it at me. Don't do it at him. Like, we can do this right now if you want. But that's kind of how that went down. I like to tell that. And then I had a moment last year, yelling at the high school basketball coach where, I didn't agree with, again, playing time with my son for that game. Not to get into a whole lot of details about it, it was what it was. And I, that one definitely I don't put as my finest moment. Yelling out, in a crowded gym with people I know, all that fun stuff. I mean, people, you can say whatever, not my best moment. I would never do that again. My son, he was fine. He wasn't embarrassed or anything, but it could have been, right? It could have been like the lady that we had officiating where, she pulls her son and she makes a huge scene about the referees and the calls and the fouls and all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? But, it was short. It was sweet. It was, hey, I yelled out. I yelled what I yelled. I later apologized on a phone call in person, and knowing that I am genuinely sorry for that, because I've been there as a coach, so I don't, like I said, being yelled at as an umpire, I don't want to be yelled as a coach either, right? You get that too, again, from parents. So I've had that a couple of times, in basketball all-stars, a grandparent and a parent yelling about one playing time, one about plays, and I'm like, that's a whole other story. But again, so not my finest moments, but I can talk about this and then give other people, other parents, other coaches, whoever, again, my advice from I've been there, I've done it. And again, that leads us into, again, my viewpoints, because I've been at every aspect of the game. So as I mentioned, I've been around youth sports. I've been around, this for like 20 years, and I've done it all, right? Every role possible, part-time recreation, athletic coordinator, over a gym. I've done it all in rec leagues. I've been the parent. I've been a coach, and I've been the official, whatever you want to call it, referee, umpire, whatever the sport is, right? I did that, before, again, like I mentioned, before I was in the Parks and Recreation. I did a little umpiring when I was younger, like early 20s, and with my dad. And, it was kind of crazy then, but your mindset is not so much on it as that young. And maybe that's the way my son is now when he referees and stuff. He don't really get into it and think a lot about it. And for years, I was just like, I'll never do it, right? I'll never do, officiate, referee. I don't want to do that. I don't like being yelled at. But my viewpoints have changed, especially now being a referee, umpire, official. So I've been able to look at it different levels, right? I've been on the parent side, and I did just mention, my the time I did yell out, right? Other times, I've just been able to watch, and if you have coach when you are a parent, sometimes you don't agree with the coach, right? And you do think, well, I would do this, and and that may be the case, right? But I've had my one moment, and again, that would never happen, because then you see on the other side what it's like to deal with that yelling parent. And I mentioned that I've dealt with it. So it was surprising that I got to that point, but because I've been on that other end, and it's not fun to be trying to coach a team. Now, this was, again, the times I dealt with it, it was constantly yelling and making a huge scene. Now we can say, like I said, I yelled out, but my viewpoint as a parent was basically, again, watching. And then it was like, it was hard to watch and not coach. So then eventually I did get into coaching. I was like, well, yeah, I'm going to coach my son. But it's a different, it is relaxing, not as much, there's not as much responsibility. You get to kind of just watch and wonder. And like I said, you do question coaches, and that's just instinct of either being a former player, which, again, I did grow up playing sports, so, and playing as an adult as well. So, you have that background. You have to get your mindset different, right? You have to say, let me get in their shoes, right? And again, it depends on what level, right? I mean, not everybody's made to coach. Not everybody makes the greatest decisions, and I get that. But it's, I think at certain levels, there's bigger and different expectations. But yeah, so like I said, my viewpoint as a parent is just, again, watch, have fun, enjoy the time, enjoy your child playing, man. Enjoy your kid playing. Focus on that. Focus on, are they having fun? Are they learning? Are they getting better? Work with them at home. All that stuff, instead of focusing on the negative and just because you want to yell or you had a bad day and now you want to take it out on the coach or the referee or the umpire, things like that. Just cheer your kid on. Again, I've seen parents, be really hard on their kid sometimes. And there's times that I was like that too. So, I think it's, only everybody knows how they are with their kids. So that's that, right? I mean, that's all different, but I'm just, like I said, as a parent, there's different ways to look at it. But again, I still yell at referees, by the way, especially in high school basketball. Again, you're a sports fan, but you don't need to fight. You don't need to do crazy stuff. It's, yell out you're terrible, yell out certain things, fun stuff to have fun with the yelling out. But, there's levels and there's limits to what you should be yelling. You definitely, right? And I say that because I'm like, some stuff doesn't bother me officiating. But, as a parent, again, I am still an ultimate fanatic because if my kid is playing, and I think he's done wrong or the team's done wrong, I'm going to yell out. That's what fans do. That's what sports has always been. Watch professional sports. Watch, whatever you watch, the fans are yelling at calls. And whether they're right or wrong, they're going to yell about it. It's the thing is, again, don't go too crazy. And this is, of course, about youth sports. But, professional sports, you see fighting and you see craziness happen. So okay, just calm down. Take it down a notch, parents. I mentioned that earlier as my viewpoint. Now, again, I mentioned as a coach, I see it differently. Because, as a coach, again, you're getting yelled at or talked to by the parents. They're always asking you stuff. And then you're yelling at the referee and the umpires and the officials. And, you want the call and you want the plays. And sometimes there are bad calls. I mean, I've seen some really bad calls. And again, your job as the coach is to defend your team. So you go out there and you argue and whatever you got to do. And, that's what you do as a coach. I mean, but there's a way to do it. There's a way to act. There's a way to carry yourself. And again, it's not always going to be that way, right? Different levels, different times, different, like I said, we've had a lot, and from the coach's standpoint, it's, coach them up, put them in the best position possible to perform. That's the biggest thing. Everybody, especially in like rec leagues and stuff, youth sports, everybody has different levels of talent. So I always found it, if this kid can't, offensively do something, what can they do defensively? Or, especially like basketball or something, right? If they can't shoot, can they set picks? Can they hustle? Can they get a rebound? Can they do something to benefit the team? That's what you want to find in kids, is teach them and help them and put them in the best position possible. And, if I were to coach again, which I don't know that I would definitely act different than I did before, right? I think I was definitely too animated, too into the game, too competitive. I mentioned this earlier. More as a coach than I was a parent, right? Definitely more animated. So I would definitely be different because, again, now as that I referee, umpire, whether it's basketball, soccer, flag football, baseball, I see how when you're on that side of the field now, you see how the coaches act. You see how the parents act even more, right? Because, again, now as the official, as that referee, you're getting it double. You're getting it, from the coaches and the parents. Yeah, I definitely see it, and then I look back and like, man, I acted pretty stupid in my day as a coach, as a parent. And again, now officiating, getting yelled at, it depends on what they yell at about, right? Again, I don't like to make mistakes. I don't like to miss calls, but it happens. But I do go out there, again, to try to be the best. I don't want to cheat. I'm not trying to cheat anybody. I don't want to cheat anybody. I don't care who wins or loses. I don't care that if I know the coach, I know the player. I don't care about any of it. You know what I mean? Like in soccer, I'm trying to learn. Even though I've coached it, I never played, but there's like a lot of rules when you referee. So I'm trying to learn so I don't make mistakes. I want to know. I don't want to miss calls. And you just see it from a different viewpoint. And that viewpoint is that, just keep it somewhat respectful. There's no reason there's no reason to talk to people a certain way or act a certain way because you think something is going on. And like I said, basketball's the worst, for sure, where, you get, there's just so much going on and you're right on top of it. And I think people care about it more. Soccer was not too bad. Soccer's not too bad. There are some coaches that definitely really love the game and they're definitely in it. It's a little better though. I think people are not as, they're not as crazy with that. Baseball, it just depends. There's always calls, and again, it just depends on the coaches. And then the coaches react, and then the parents react, or the parents react, and the coaches react, and they feed off of each other. And sometimes as a referee or umpire, you feed off of that energy, especially in basketball. Like if they're hostile towards you, you got to try not to be hostile back at them. But it depends on how they approach you, and that's that whole thing. Like treat people the way you want to be treated. Like if you're giving me attitude, I might just give you attitude too. But, I try to, you try to talk to them in a certain way. But, like I said, I've seen it at every level and at every role. And we just have to know that, at the end of the day, I guess, like I said, especially in youth sports, not even at high school level, but like at youth sports again, we got to be able to just kind of calm down. Everybody calm down, The best thing I heard, as a referee the other night was, it was like 9-10-year-olds, and the little boy was getting mad at the game, right? They're losing, and whatever he thought, was going on. I don't know. But he was just getting frustrated and mad. And I heard like his mama yell out, like, hey, son, son, calm down. It's okay. You're not going to the league tomorrow. And that's the thing, right? It's good to have that energy. It's good to have that competitiveness and that care. Like you should care, right? The coach, the parents should care. The coach should care, right? They should be caring about how, they are coaching, acting, how they're teaching these kids. The kids should care about how they're playing. The parents should be caring, again, how their kid is acting. I think behavior, again, attitude and behavior is way bigger than talent when it comes to definitely youth sports, because, again, if you don't fix it, then it goes into high school. So you have to, when you look at that, you have to say you got to care. Officials have to care, again. Don't just be there for the paycheck. Go, show up, do what you do. And, again, care about the calls, care about what you're doing. And that's all I'm saying is, like, care about what you're doing. And that'll make it better, right? I mean, you're not going to make every call, but want to learn, want to be better, want to know what you're doing. And, again, the state of youth sports, hopefully it can, get better. But people got to get better. It starts with the adults in the room. And, we got to get better. So with that being said, this is another episode of Fanatically Speaking with Kent. You can find us, again, I keep saying us. Again, log off is gone. You can find the show on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You can listen on all podcast outlets, especially Apple, Spotify, Amazon, even on YouTube. Go out there, listen, like, follow, share, really listen and share to other people. Whatever device, tap that app. And as for this episode, I am out.